A very good day to all of you. My name is Anil D'Souza, and I have a short 10-minute capsule in, understanding how leaders behave in a moment of crisis. So, leadership in crisis, essentially. And leadership, as we know, is an all-encompassing subject, and there are many interpretations of leadership styles, execution styles, leadership personality drivers, and so on and so forth. So, we are going to look at a few themes in understanding how leaders manage in a moment of crisis. And so what we're going to do is, I'm going to use, literature or Shakespeare's Julius Caesar as a device in understanding, how leaders behave in a moment of crisis. So we are going to take a short scene out of the play, and we are going to look at, how leadership presence is essentially, manifested in what can be construed as a moment of survival, life or death for, the character over here. So what I'm going to do is, hook up my presentation. And so here it is, uh, William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. That's a rough sketch of Julius Caesar by me. And we are going to look at, leadership in crisis. So, and why is this important? Why is it important for us to understand, leadership presence, and especially in difficult situations? So, through Julius Caesar, we look at, leadership presence. We look at how does a leader think, on his own feet. How important it is for him to know his audience as well, and how is he able to persuade, through the power of rhetoric, through the power of his own oratory, and bring about, to a large extent, a reversal of fortune for him and turn the tide in his favor, really speaking. So here we have a key character who, is in this moment of crisis. And, we would have all heard this, this line, this very famous line, which is "Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears." And it's part of one of Shakespeare's most well-known and, often, recited speeches. And we are going to look at, what this really means, and how this entire speech has been structured, and which goes through various themes, various emotions, where you're able to give the crowd a sense of what your purpose is, but very subtly. And that's how the character does it. And the character here in question is Mark Antony. He's a friend of Julius Caesar, and he considers Julius Caesar to be his mentor and guide. So the scene is very simple. Julius Caesar has been assassinated, and among his key assassinators are Brutus, who is again his close friend. And so Brutus considers himself to be a noble, person, and he keeps saying that he didn't kill Caesar because he loved him any less, but the fact that he loved Rome more. And so he uses nationalistic pride to convince the crowd or the people of the fact that it is good for Rome that Julius Caesar has been removed, really speaking. And that's the time that Mark Antony, who is again a general in Rome, and he's again a close friend of Julius Caesar, and he considers Caesar to be his mentor and his guide, and he gets to know of the murder, so he rushes to the Senate floor, and he sees Caesar lying over there. So he's filled with many emotions. One of them, of course, is grief, to see his mentor lying there dead, and the other is, of course, for his own survival. And because he's known to be close to Julius Caesar, and the conspirators say, let's kill Mark Antony as well. And so how does he get out of this situation? And he's worried about not just his life, but the life of his family as well. They could kill his family, they could take his property, they could usurp it all, and they could just end his lineage, really speaking. So this is a moment of truth for Mark Antony, and how does he really come out of this, and how does he get how does he protect and preserve himself to live another day, really speaking. So that's when he asks the conspirators, and Brutus in particular, that I'd like to address the crowd and express my grief over there. And of course they don't want him to do that, because they're worried that he might sway the crowd in his favor and against them. And so they elicit a promise from him, and that even if he speaks to the crowd, he will not in any way blame the conspirators. And here we must remember that Brutus, out of his sense of nobility, believes that we should allow Mark Antony to also speak to the people. It's only fair that we do that, because what we've done is not wrong. So there's nothing that we have to feel guilty or fear, really. So here he is, Mark Antony. His brief is very clear. He cannot blame the conspirators. He cannot speak evil of them. He can at the most express his grief for Caesar's death. And so here he is in the immortal lines. And through this speech, we'll try to understand, how a great orator, understands his audience's pulse, knows his audience well enough and knows what to say. And at the same time, ensuring that he does not, disrupt or go against the brief that has been given to him, because that could mean his death as well. So there's Mark Antony. He's, addressing the crowd. And the crowd is at that point in time very belligerent, and they are, in a very angry mood. And so he kind of appeals to them. And so he says, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears, he says. For I've come to bury Caesar, he says, not praise him. So he makes it very clear that he's not here to, praise Caesar or make the co-conspirators feel bad. And the fact that the evil that men do lives after them, but the good is oft interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. So the evil that men do, of course, continues, it gets spoken of, and it always kind of remains after them. And he says, hath not the noble Brutus told you? So he uses the word noble over here very frequently, that Caesar were ambitious. And if that was so, it is a grievous fault, he says, and grievously has Caesar answered for it. And here, having taken leave of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honorable man, he says, come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. So here I am, I've been given permission by Brutus, who is an honorable man, he says, with a tinge of sarcasm, of course. And that's, in a sense, changed over time the meaning of the word, to be an honorable man. But he says, here I have permission from them to come and speak, at Caesar's funeral. And then he expresses some grief when he says, he was my friend, faithful and just to me. But he says, Brutus says he was ambitious. So he says he reinforces, and so that not to antagonize his, the co-conspirators over there. That Caesar was ambitious. But then again, he reminds them, he says, he had brought many a captive home to Rome, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. Did that seem ambitious, he asks, so he's brought so much of, wealth into Rome. And he also adds when he says, when the poor had cried, Caesar had wept. And ambition should actually be made of sterner stuff, because ambitious people don't cry when the poor weep, he says. And then he again reinforces continuously. But Brutus says he was an ambitious man, and Brutus is an honorable man, he says. And then he reminds them that thrice on the Roman festival, the festival of the Lupercal, as he says, do you all did remember that it was thrice on the Lupercal when I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. So here is Caesar, okay, who we are told is ambitious, who we are told is greedy, but he was offered the king's crown thrice. And he did thrice refuse, he says. Was that ambition, he asks. And then he goes on to say, I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke. So I'm not here to contest what Brutus has said. But I am here to speak what I do know, he says. Then again, he appeals to their conscience, to their grief. When he says, you all did love him once, he says, and not without cause. So what cause withholds you then to mourn for him, he says, in this moment of Caesar's death? Why can't we even mourn for somebody who has given Rome so much, he says. And then he ends again with a very immortal swipe, and he says, oh judgment, he says, thou art fled to brutish beast. Where is our reason gone, he says. And men have lost their reason, he says. And then expressing his own grief, he says, bear with me, my heart is in the coffin there with Caesar, and I must pause till it comes back to me. So here, again, a classic construct, and by a fantastic orator, a fantastic politician in terms of how he's structured his entire speech, and he's appealed to the crowd through grief, through sentiment, and through giving them a sense of, the dead man's personality, and at the same time ensuring that he is not in any way disrespecting, at least, on the face of it, the co-conspirators, but he is appealing to the crowd. And he's asking the crowd, why can't you mourn for this individual? Why can't you consider that this man did so much for Rome? And he's, in a sense, given his entire life for Rome. And that's when he does turn things in his favor. And you have the entire crowd that's now, rooting for Mark Antony. So very simply, some things that he's, looked at very quickly. How does he get the crowd's attention? That's the first thing that he does. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears, for I have come to bury Caesar. He says, not praise him. Let's bury a man who's dead over here. What else does he look at? He establishes his own neutrality, and he doesn't in any sense, antagonizes his the liberators, or who are actually the co-conspirators. So he acknowledges them as well. Okay, he expresses grief. Okay, he expresses his own grief. He was my friend. He was noble and just to me, faithful and just to me. You know, and he also evidences, Caesar's magnanimity, continuously. He had brought so much of wealth to Rome. He's cried for the poor. He's refused the kingly crown. And, but he's given everything that he has to Rome. He's continuously evidencing Caesar's magnanimity. And at the same time, okay, he's also reinforcing the liberator. He's talking about the liberator as well, reinforcing that here are people. I'm not here to disprove what Brutus spoke, and again, he reinforces Caesar's magnanimity. And towards the end, he's provoking the crowd's conscience. He's saying, look, here is a man who's dead, and you all did love him once, and not without cause. And he's appealing to their reason. No judgment, he says, where has thou fled? Has it fled to brutish beast, and have we all lost our reason? Shouldn't we be grieving at this point in time? And considering, what a good man Caesar was, very, very subtly. So with that, in a sense, that's a small introduction to, leadership in crisis. And I hope you found this, little, monologue meaningful. And if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to take them. And thank you very much for your time. Yeah.